Welcome back to the 2-on-1 Fast Break podcast. I'm Sean Kennedy, joined once again by our NFL handicapper, Dan Erda. Dan, coming off your worst week of the year, how are you feeling?
I can't say I didn't warn you guys.
You did a week earlier. You said the big regression monster was coming to bite you, and you had the 1-2 week, and then followed that up with the 0-3 worst week of the season,
We're on
and
a 1-5 slide right now,
one
which
in
we
five
need to right
slide.
that ship quickly.
Yeah, you're down to 63% on the season, still very good. That would be an elite percentage if it was over the entire season. And so hopefully you get it going once again here in week 12.
This is why a couple weeks ago in a column I preached like responsibility and money management. This is why when you go on a nice run, you don't cash out and go out and buy something nice right away. Because if you did that and then you start over 2 weeks ago, you're 1-5 and in the hole really big. But if you stretch it out over the course of a long season, like you said, it's still 63%.
Yeah, I don't think that necessarily you can't buy yourself something nice with your winnings. I think it's more like, oh, I'm on such a roll, I'm unbeatable, and instead of putting 100 down in the game, suddenly you're putting 200 down in each play. I think that's really where the money responsibility comes into play with your bankroll.
Absolutely. I've said it a million times. Money responsibility and lack thereof is more why people lose money than bad picks.
Yeah, you can't increase stuff based on either if you're going really well and you think you're unbeatable and want to put more down on each game, or if things are going poorly for you and you want to double down and try to make it all up with one big swing. That's the two areas people really get into trouble with gambling. So,
Don't worry, I'm in rant mode today. But it's one thing to go 0-3 and just have three terrible picks, have them all blown out, and just be like, I was due for a crappy week of picking teams. I got screwed by punt protection. I got screwed by horrible coaching. We'll get to all this as we go over the
all right,
game.
so let's get cracking with those excuses, and we'll start off
Excuse.
with we'll start off with one of your plays from last week. Detroit -1 at the Steelers looked good for the majority of the game,
Great.
and then it ended up with a Steelers 37-27 victory. But Dan, how did they get there?
Well, I wrote about this in the column, which I'm sure all of you have read already. But Detroit pretty much controlled the game in the second quarter. They scored 27 points in the second quarter, basically throwing the ball to Calvin Johnson and having him go get it, which for some reason they stopped doing in the second half.
I did read they started bracket coveraging Calvin. They were trying to do because Ike Taylor is their number one corner. He's a
Mm-hmm.
pretty good cover corner. They try to do some approximation of Revis Island with him, and they were trying to do that in the first
Can't do that with
half.
Calvin.
Doesn't
Can't do
work
that
with
with anybody.
Calvin, so they started double covering him, and yeah,
But basically, Pittsburgh made their run, and Detroit was still up by 4 points and driving. I think they're at like the 9 yard line or something like that. And it was 4th and 6.
fourth and
Fourth
four.
and 4. That's all.
Yeah,
Four. What? All right.
yeah.
All you gotta do is you kick the field goal here. I like to think of myself as a progressive football mind. I like the guys who go for it and who don't just do things because that's the way it was always done. But as much as I love progressive thinking, this is as clear of a you kick the field goal situation as you could possibly find. And if you are gonna go for it, use your offense.
Yeah,
Don't have your punter trying to run up the middle.
you got a lot of weapons. You got Calvin, who we just talked about, obviously one of the best receivers of the generation, and you got I think they were sitting Reggie Bush, but Joey Bell was coming
Joey Bell's doing fine,
doing
yeah.
doing some good things out of the backfield.
It's
So use one of your offensive weapons and don't have a punter come in who in
was
his
the
only
holder.
other rush. They tried something earlier that season, and he also fumbled on that occasion.
Did he really?
Yeah, and he's probably 170 pounds soaking wet. So
I mean, he's a punter.
it's not his job to convert huge fourth down plays in the red zone.
My question, though, and I wasn't sure from the angle that we saw this play a million times, if he didn't fumble the ball, did he have the first down?
No.
He was short still.
Yeah, he got about 2 yards past the line of scrimmage and got derailed, and the ball traveled further. So where they recovered was
It looked like okay.
where it would have been a first down.
I wasn't
but
sure from
yeah,
the angles.
it jumped out and traveled about 4 yards when he got hit.
And then, of course, Pittsburgh drives down the field, scores a touchdown. And then Detroit's in panic mode. Now, if they just kicked the field goal, went up by 7, and Pittsburgh drives down the field and ties the game, you're going to have about 5 minutes left getting the ball back. And you can run your offense. You don't have to panic. You could run the stuff you usually do. If you get a touchdown, great. If you don't, you go to overtime. You still have Calvin Johnson on your side. I'm not saying it would have won. Pittsburgh could have won in overtime. But I think that's the strategy. Instead, Pittsburgh scores his touchdown right away. Detroit then is down by 3, so they kind of have to rush some throws.
Tried to force it to Calvin.
Tried to force it and end up throwing an interception. Pittsburgh actually scored again, and what looks like a complete blowout actually should not have even been a win for Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I mean, just one of those freak things that you say everybody in the NFL, there's a lot of parity. One given play can swing things in either direction, and a fourth down fake field goal that doesn't convert, and that was certainly a huge shift in that game.
If I'm going to lose on one play like that, though, I really wish it was like the player screwing up, not the coach doing something that's completely moronic. And it's getting to the point where the Lions might not be bettable right now because their coach is so terrible. Jim Schwartz is about as bad as a coach who has Matt Stafford and Calvin Johnson and Sue and Fairley and all these guys can possibly be.
Yeah, a lot of talent on that Detroit roster. They just don't seem to be pulling it all together to really be that playoff contender that everybody seems to think they can be. With all those pieces, you would think they would perennially just be up there with the top teams, but they always seem to take that step back just when you think they've gotten there.
You can't swear off the team for an entire season because value is value and you have to take it, but based on a couple overs by them that I've lost and this game, I'm going to try to shy away from the Lions. I just can't stand this team.
Yeah, plenty of other games to choose from, that's for sure. So moving on to one of your other plays last week, you had the Redskins-Eagles over 52.5, and that ended up with a 24-16 final. Ironically,
really good first half score.
What's that?
24-16 would have been a really good first half score.
Yeah, that would have been good for you. Ironically, you're maybe you're an Eagles fan. Were you kind of in the back of your mind rooting for the Redskins to tie up that game?
No, I was not. I mean, the thought was in my mind is like that would be a silver lining. For those of you who didn't watch it, the Redskins made a furious comeback after being down 24-0 and actually had the ball in the Eagles' territory and could have tied the game with the 2-point conversion. Would have made it 24-24. But you know what? Even then, if a field goal is what made the difference in overtime, I still would have lost.
Yeah, so
I was a little bit rooting for the Redskins when the Eagles were up 24-7 in the second quarter. The Redskins were driving, and I was kind of rooting for them to score there. Because I think there was like 6 minutes left, because then they would have scored, and then the Eagles would have gotten the ball back, and we could have all of a sudden had a really nice little output, but they turned the ball over, as they've been doing way too much this year. And as much as I'm going to whine on the podcast this week, this is not one of those games. It was a bad pick.
All right.
Eagles home games also don't go over.
San Diego they usually don't win either. That was the first time they won at home in over a calendar year. So if you don't score, you don't win. And
the Eagles Chargers home game went over. I think that might be the only one.
Yeah, you might be right. We don't have the facts right in front of us to check that, but
they scored a combined 7 points against the Giants and the Cowboys in those 2 home games.
Yeah, that's true. So, that was during the end of the Mike Vick era, as it might be known.
The Matt Barkley era.
Yeah,
that's before they
start and the finish of the Matt Barkley era.
That's before the Eagles realized that they had the best quarterback in the NFL right there on their roster.
And that's one thing I wanted to mention. Yeah, speaking of Nick Foles, he is on pace to have the best passer rating in a season in NFL history.
And it's cool because that's awesome. It's incredible. The greatest thing about it is he's not doing it like Alex Smith. He's not avoiding interceptions by throwing 5-yard pass after 5-yard pass. He's actually taking shots.
Yeah, he's letting defenders tip the ball up in the air, and then Deshaun can catch it behind him after he's underthrown the ball.
Yes, and this is a complete fluke. Nick Foles is going to throw interceptions, but the overall efficiency is there, and I think that's real.
Yeah, he's definitely a great fit, it looks like, for the Chip Kelly system. Everybody said you need a mobile quarterback. I think first and foremost, you need an accurate quarterback because the way Chip Kelly designs his offense, he's getting people open.
Yes.
And even early in the year when Vic was in there, they were putting up numbers, but they could have put so much more because he was every other drive he was missing a wide open receiver because as much as Mike Vick brings to the table, top-notch accuracy isn't one of those tools that he has.
He gets these guys open, and those guys, the second they get open, they need the ball in their hands so then they can make their moves, which guys like McCoy and Deshaun Jackson can certainly do.
Right, and Nick Foles is doing that right now, and he does seem to have the good enough arm to get those deep balls where they need to go more often than not, even if once in a while they are a little underthrown.
Although the one thing that scares the living daylights out of me is someone's comparing him to the 2007 Derek Anderson year, where he had an incredible year.
That was the Browns' lone playoff
Yes, it was.
appearance for the last decade or so. So yeah, hopefully that's not the case, and I don't think that is.
No,
I don't think we have a
yeah,
Derek Anderson 2.0 on our hands. So that one went under, unfortunately. So that
that was
was
the one. That's the one loss I will take and just say it was a bad play.
all right. So the third and final play here to talk about from Week 11 was a three-team teaser. You had Denver +2, which that covered pretty easily as they won outright 27-17 over the Chiefs, and Seattle -3.5, and they also covered with plenty room to spare as they won 41-20 over the Vikings. And then the third and final leg, which I know you got a few things to say about, was the Cleveland +16 portion of that teaser, and that as much as Cleveland seemed to be in control of that game at times, they ended up losing by 21, 41-20 to the Bengals, and so that +16 did not cover, ruining that teaser.
Man, where to start in this game? Two blocked punts by Cincinnati, 3 interceptions, 2 fumble recoveries, and they still
Two of those things returned for touchdowns.
two of
One
those
block
things
punt,
returned,
one fumble returned for touchdowns.
and they still Cleveland had the ball first and goal from the 7 with about 2 minutes left in the game, and all they had to do was score there to cover this 16. If they played this game 100 times, they cover 16, 90 of them.
Especially talking about that last minute, that's when teams are in prevent defense.
Yeah.
They're up 21.
Just throw the ball to Jordan Cameron. Throw it to Josh Gordon.
It doesn't really matter too much to them if they score a touchdown there or not. So that's when those garbage time touchdowns always seem to pile up, and you get those backdoor covers. This wasn't a backdoor cover in the sense of the spread, but it was in the sense of the teaser line.
I mean, if anything, watching this game, I would be more tempted to take the Browns +5.5, which was the original spread that it opened at, if they were to play again.
Bengals offense still looks awful.
Andy Dalton threw for 92 yards.
92, 93 yards. And he had 3 touchdowns just because of those fluke plays in the special teams and defense setting them up with awesome field position. Cincinnati, that's the only way they're going to beat a team by 21 this year. They're not an offensive juggernaut. Andy Dalton did not turn the corner, and they're going to need big efforts from their defense to going forward to really beat some of the better teams in the league.
Well, this was another bet that I made that I would make again in a heartbeat. And yeah, I'm whining. I'm in whining mode today. I'm sorry, but that was a ridiculous loss.
All right, so you still feel good about the Browns, which is a good segue into your Week 12 plays. You have 5 plays on the docket, so let's start with that. Those Cleveland Browns, who you like. Cleveland -2 at home against the Steelers, who ruined a bet for you last week. So I like that you're kind of zagging. You got that Cleveland coming off the loss. You're sticking with them, and Pittsburgh caused a loss for you, and you're going against them.
Yeah, we're going with this is coming off of 2 misleading box scores, and the box score makes Pittsburgh look a lot better than they played, and looks Cleveland look a lot worse. And Pittsburgh actually played very well. Roethlisberger played great, throwing to Antonio Brown, who had an incredible game. But Browns have Joe Hayden. You saw what they did with AJ Green. I think they're going to lock down on Antonio Brown.
Emmanuel Sanders might be out for the game.
Emmanuel Sanders might be out for this game, so I mean, it might be the Jericho Cotchery show for Pittsburgh in Cleveland.
Not a real exciting show.
Well,
he's getting a lot of red zone scores this year, but I don't think he's a guy you want to count on to help move the ball up and down the field at this point in his career.
I told a friend like 4 or 5 weeks ago who picked up Cotchery. That was a dumb pickup. That Cotchery sucks, and now he thinks that he's right and I'm wrong. And doesn't think that they're just fluke red zone touchdowns.
He's right. It was a good pickup.
It was, but the Jericho Cotchery is not good.
We live in a results-based society.
That's right. Very, very true. And you got Cleveland going back home. They are disappointed by the Cincinnati game, but they saw what Cincinnati is, and they saw that Cincinnati is a team that could very easily lose their next 3 games, all against pretty decent teams. They know that they could still win this division. They're going to come home. They're going to play a really good game. They're not going to have 2 punts blocked. They're not going to fumble the ball twice. They're not going to throw.
Lock of the week. The Cleveland Browns will not have 2 punts blocked this week. So if your site offers that line at 1.5 punts blocked, definitely take the under.
That's like a lock that Brandon Lang would give out at like -5,000 to his followers.
Or like no safety in the Super Bowl. And then what do you know? The very first possession. That worked out real well for me that year.
I'm not sold on Pittsburgh, not the slightest bit. Maybe if they had Sanders and Brown against the secondary, that's not that good. But I think they get smoked in this game.
All right, so that's your first play of the week. Cleveland -2 against the Steelers. Moving on to the second play, you have a teaser. It's involving the Thursday night game, so hopefully people read the column, they saw the pick, because I don't think the podcast is going to be up by the time that takes place. So you have New Orleans down to -2 and Dallas up to +8.5 in a two-team teaser. So Dan, what's your thinking with this play?
Well, actually, one really good thing is that when I got this, New Orleans was -8, so I was able to tease on 9-2 on my 6-point teaser.
They're now 9.5.
9.5. So I even got a couple extra points there too. Thinking there's pretty easy. Atlanta sucks. Not only do they suck, they quit. The team's disappointed. They know they're not a terrible team when healthy, but the circumstances have not gone their way, and I think they just want to go home and start again next year. So it's a home game against the Saints, so that you want to think they get up a little bit for that. But the Saints are a dominant team. They've not been great on the road, but their struggles have mostly been outdoors. And at least now they still have Breeze playing in a dome. And I just think that it's a mismatch in terms of talent. If they don't cover the 10, if they don't cover the 9.5, whatever, I definitely think they at least win by a field goal.
Good point. Still playing indoors in the Georgia Dome there, and that fast track is really what that offense relies upon. So I think you can throw the road struggles numbers out the window, as you mentioned. So getting them at -2 certainly plays a factor, as opposed to if you teased it down to -3.5 now. I think that field goal key number is obviously huge
in general. And I know I did this last week with Seattle. I teased it down to -3.5. But for the most part, that's a horrible thing to do.
Yeah.
If you're teasing, you want to get it under 7 or under 3.
Because, with a tease, that key number, if it hits that'll be a loss for you, as opposed to a parlay. So,
and then Dallas.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about Dallas. I think I agree with you there. Not only do I think Dallas is the better team, I just think all of those NFC East games historically are just such close games.
Close.
They know the team so well. Game. And +8.5 is just a huge line with that tease. So.
Yeah, and you pretty much summed up every reason why I like that. I expect a close game, and I think Dallas is the better team. And New York's had a crazy run of luck facing either bad teams or good teams whose
backup quarterbacks.
Yes, and you know what? I've read the news clippings actually from New York. Those guys are fired up for this game. They want Dallas bad. So if they pull out the win, I wouldn't be shocked. But if it's more than a touchdown, I will be shocked.
Yeah, I could definitely see one of those late-game Dallas gaffes.
Tony Romo has the ball down 2.
Yeah, in the red zone, and he gets hit in the backwards pass or something, and they end up losing because of that, but not by 8.5.
So a little tangent here, and I've been wondering this all week. We're both Eagles fans. Who do we want to win this game? Because on one hand, if Dallas wins, it pretty much cuts New York out of the playoff picture.
We split with the Giants already, right?
Yes, we split with the Giants and we lost to Dallas.
So I would say the Giants, just because there's the potential that we could have lost both games to Dallas.
True, but if we lose Week 17 against Dallas, we're probably not getting in the playoffs anyway, unless we're a game up on them already, and then still have the tiebreaker.
Exactly. So I think you just want to have Dallas be below the Giants, because right now Dallas has a tiebreaker against us, whereas the Giants don't.
But you just don't want the Giants to think that they're good and go on one of these crazy runs that they tend to do. The other benefit with the Giants winning would be that the Eagles would have sole possession in first place without the bye week having any effect on it.
That's true. And then the city will get fired up, and everybody can talk about how great the Eagles are, and we'll have unrealistic expectations about playoff runs, and then they'll face a couple good teams and come back down to earth. And that's Philadelphia Eagles football, everybody.
Hey, the big game's going to be the Detroit game. They have a home game against Detroit. And if they can win that game, I like the chances of the division.
Well, Jim Schwartz will still be coaching for the Detroit, right? So I guess you like the Eagles' chances if that's the case.
Maybe if they quadruple team Calvin Johnson.
Yeah, they might need to, given the Eagles secondary. So that's the two-team tease, New Orleans, Dallas. Moving on to the third play, Week 12, you like the Rams -1 at home against Chicago. So this is pretty, if the way I read it, this is pretty much a pure play against public perception. Is that right?
I will never make a play just against public perception. A lot of times the line comes out and it looks like a trap, and A trap would be a bet that the lines is set on purpose to get all the public on one side that looks to be the right side, and then ends up losing.
Also, a pile of leaves concealing a hole, that would also be a trap.
That's another. That's the number two definition in the dictionary.
Yeah.
So sometimes, a lot of times, the sharp players like to look for those trap games and play the other side, with the thought being you want to be with Vegas, you don't want to be with the public in a head-to-head situation like that.
Never want to be with the public.
And I'm okay with making the sharp bet, but I have to actually see why I'm betting it too. I'm never going to make a play just because I think it looks shady or just because I think they want you on Chicago. And the reason that I like the Rams so much, their defense is very good. They're actually not a terrible team. They're coming home.
Got Quinn and Long on that D line, very solid defensive front.
And on the same, along the same lines, Josh McCown has really done an admirable job. It just goes to show you night and day between them and Green Bay, the importance of having a decent backup quarterback. But let's not get carried away. He's still Josh McCown. He's still playing on the road against a really, really good defense. On the other hand, the Bears defense can't stop anybody. I think Zach Stacy's a top 3 fantasy play this week. I think he's just going to absolutely go off. And I also think that I understand that Tavon Austin's game 2 weeks ago was a little bit fluky because he only touched the ball 3 times and just happened to have crazy touchdown runs all 3 times. But I think now St. Louis has no choice but to get the ball in his hands more. I think it's going to be an efficient offense. I think they're going to not take any really big chances. A lot of throws, a lot of Austin, a lot of Zach Stacy. And hey, I mean, say what you want about how bad Kellen Clemens is. He's done not terrible so far. He seems to know.
I think that's on his Wikipedia page.
Not terrible.
Kellen Clemens, a not terrible quarterback so far.
This is the battle of backups who have done not terrible.
Yeah, that's true.
Josh McCown's done a lot better than Kellen Clemens so far.
That's true.
But I'm just saying, coming off a bye, with that defense, with those offensive weapons, I mean, Brandon Jacobs rushed for over 100 yards against this Chicago defense.
Ray Rice last week had his best game of the season after everybody and their favorite fantasy analyst all said that Rice was done. They had a fork in his back.
And now watch all the idiots are going to put him back in their starting lineup.
Yeah, now he's going to get another 20 carry for 31-yard game or something. So I agree with you. Big game for Zach Stacy.
You made the point in my column that says more about Ray Rice, that we're using his name as like even Ray Rice had a good game against.
Yeah, Ray Rice top 5 fantasy pick this season. Now talking about how if he's a good game against your defense, that defense sucks.
But yes, but I really like the Rams this week. I think they get the win here, and I think that the Bears come back down to earth a little bit, considering that their quarterback was coaching high school a couple weeks ago.
All right, well, we'll see how that one plays out. Josh McCown, and I think he's undefeated as the start of the season. You might disagree with you, but you like Rams -1.
Yes.
So moving on to the 4th pick, you like the Dolphins +4.5 at home against the surging Carolina Panthers. So Carolina coming off that huge win against Monday night. 2 huge wins. San Francisco 2 weeks ago, and then this past Monday night against New England. So you like them? You think Miami can just cover here, or you think they can win this outright?
This is the letdown spot of all letdown spots. 2 big wins for Carolina in a row. Short week, off a Monday night game. You got to think that team's drinking their own Kool-Aid. They're in Miami. Cam Newton's going to be popping bottles at 2 in the morning on Saturday night down at those Miami clubs, too, broing out with LeBron.
Nah, he's in the film room. If I know Cam Newton, I actually don't know Cam Newton at all.
And the thing is, the Dolphins are not a terrible team. They've been humiliated in the press with this incognito Jonathan Martin thing. And if they have any character whatsoever, this is when they come together. Instead of letting it break them apart, they say, hey, you know what? We could still, we're still in the playoff picture here.
Looked good last week.
Looked very good last week. Carolina has a very, very good running defense, which is great because Miami doesn't have a run game at all, so that's not really going to be a huge detriment to them. If this were a team like aforementioned Rams, where all they pretty much do is feed the running back, they'd be in trouble.
It's ironic that we now say that about the Rams when there's about 9 weeks going into the season before they even got a rushing touchdown.
And then they realize...
But now they give them 30 carries a game because they realize he's their most productive player on offense.
And Kellen Clemens is their quarterback.
Right. So getting back to the Dolphins.
Yeah, I mean, and they're home, and 2 very, very good defenses. I'm not trying to bash Carolina here. I just think that neither of these teams win blowout games. Miami's only lost 2 games by more than 3 points this entire season. One of them was in New Orleans, which I think we can agree to forgive them for that one.
Yeah, Saints are pretty good at home, I hear.
And the other one, yeah, they're not bad. And the other one was against the Patriots, and that wasn't a great game. I think it was Gronk's first game back, or maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong with that. But Patriots are a good team. Bottom line is Miami has either won or been close in all but 2 of their games.
Yeah, they got a good defense. Cameron Wake and Brent Grimes both leading their respective units on that defensive
And I
squad.
I just don't think that Carolina is so far above them that they can lay 4.5 points on the road.
All right. Well, this is one of those spots I feel like where everybody's seen Carolina with those huge wins back-to-back weeks, and they're going to say, 4.5. That's not too.
Oh, the
that's not a
Dolphins! The
huge
Dolphins
line.
are in shambles. They have that whole incognito
Yeah,
thing.
they'll definitely win by a touchdown. I think there's a lot of that public perception feeding into that line.
Although public perception has led to a lot of wins for a lot of public bettors this year.
That's true, but I think that is bound to balance out in the long run. So that's the 4th play of this week, Miami plus 4.5. And the 5th and final play of Week 12 in a pretty crowded card for you. You like Arizona at a pick'em in the first half. This is your first half play of the year.
It is the first, and we have to actually follow me on Twitter. I'm going to confirm the line Sunday morning. Usually the first half line is the game line cut in half. It's not always.
They didn't post the first half line yet.
They did not post it yet.
Okay.
I assume it's going to be pick'em. Now that the line's actually going up, Arizona is now 2.5 point favorites. It could be -1, could be -1.5. Either way,
-1. You push on 1,
yes.
So it's not like there's any difference.
I mean, if it's less than 3, I'm taking this.
Okay.
I really like them to win the game, but I'm not going to let myself be a victim of an Andrew Luck 4th quarter comeback.
Arizona playing the Colts.
Arizona's playing the Colts, yes. In their last 3 games, I wrote this in the column. I don't have the numbers exactly with me, but the Colts have been getting off to horrid starts.
Yeah, it's 17-6 against the Titans, 24-0 in one of the games.
The Texans, that was
Texans
one of them.
game,
These aren't even great teams.
No, they've just really been struggling each week out of the gates, and they don't look good for 2-3 quarters, and then all of a sudden
Andrew Luck comes into
they look like the team that has beaten Seattle and Denver. And
Andrew Luck comes into the huddle and says, "Guys, can't lose this game." And then he inspires everybody.
Awfully gruff voice for a 23-year-old.
Oh, Simmons makes fun of him all the time. He has like the Andre the Giant kind of voice.
Oh, does he?
Yeah, Simmons makes fun of it all the time. Simmons does his version of the voice. It sounds exactly like Vin Diesel in the Fast and the Furious movies.
All right. Well, Andrew Luck does look bulletproof out there at times, much like Vin Diesel in the Fast and the Furious movies.
Well, he has not in the first half, though. So, listen, I don't know. I really think Arizona's going to win this game. But Luck just seems to have a knack for these crazy 4th quarter comebacks. So I'm just going to bet on the trend continuing, especially if you have a team, Indianapolis, going into the West Coast. They'll be a little bit off to start. And I just think that the trend will continue. It's not that far of a trip.
Yeah, I think Indianapolis to Arizona, it's probably a 3-hour flight.
They're still starting the games 3 hours later than they usually do.
No, it's a 1-hour difference.
Yeah, I thought Indy games start at 1.
Oh, well, yeah, but
like their usual home games and the
right.
games that they're used to playing. Their schedules.
There's not a time zone difference.
Oh no,
no. A time zone difference. So.
I'm aware.
So
I like
Arizona's defense a lot.
Their defense is great.
Calais Campbell, Mathau's been playing awesome for them.
And
obviously, Patrick Peterson, one of the best corners in the league.
This is one of those games where the loss of Reggie Wayne is going to be very, very clear.
Exactly. Peterson can shut down Hilton, and they don't have much receiving options beyond him. So I think Cardinals defense is going to keep them in this game at a minimum. So if their offense can do anything, and
it's going to be up to Griffin Whalen and who are their other wide receivers?
Levon Brazil and Darius Hayward-Bay and Kobe Fleener at tight end position. But not a lot of weapons outside of Hilton that I'd be too worried about if I was Arizona. So I think it all boils down to that Arizona offensive line, whether they can keep Mathis from killing Carson Palmer. But
it's also up to Carson Palmer to not throw the ball to the Colts 2 or 3 times, like he's very prone to doing.
Yeah, I think that usually falls on the shoulders of the quarterback. But so Arizona pick 'em first half.
Look for the confirmed line. It's probably not going to be pick 'em. When I said pick 'em,
Might
the
be
line
-1.
the line was -1 for the game, so I took half of that. But now the line's going up. It could be -1, -1.5. But whatever it is, as long as it's less than 3, I'm locking it in.
All right, so that's your fifth and final play of Week 12. To recap that docket for you, it's a Cleveland -2 against the Steelers, a two-team teaser with the Saints and Dallas -2 plus 8.5. St. Louis -1 against the Bears, the Dolphins +4.5 against the Panthers, and Arizona pick'em or -1 in the first half against the Colts. So that concludes this week's edition of the podcast. I actually forgot to ask for questions this week because people weren't sending me questions, so it kind of slipped my mind. But
also, believe it or not, we don't get paid to do this podcast, so we do have work.
Yeah, there's other work commitments and things intruding on my efforts to put forth a quality podcast each week.
And one more thing is follow me on Twitter because I've been releasing props usually between 11:30 and 12 every Sunday, but I also do them Thursday and Monday. Last week I was 7-0 on props if you include the 2 Thursday, 1 Monday, and 4 on Sunday. So I mean, as much as I know a lot of people are a little upset that they went 0-3 on my picks, but if you followed those, I mean, assuming I don't do props for the same amount that I do regular picks, but you could have made some of your change back.
All right, so yeah, be sure to follow Dan on Twitter at Dan Urda. That's DANURDA, and of course follow Philly Fast Break at Philly Fast Break. And send us your questions for next week's podcast, and we'll be sure to answer them and have another lively discussion for you guys.
Let's get back on track.
All right, everybody, enjoy Week 12 of the NFL, and we will catch you next week.